Willow Creek Springs presents Healthy Living with your host, Joe Grumbine.
Well, hello, and welcome back to the Healthy Living Podcast. I'm your host, Joe Grumbine, and today we've got a very special guest. Her name's Dr. Theresa Lyons, and Dr. Lyons works with families in more than 21 countries, and these are people that are looking for trustworthy, science-based guidance on raising and supporting autistic children, and she's created a program of navigating autism, and that's spelled AWE. She focuses on helping families transform overwhelm into practical steps they can use, whether it's interpreting lab results, navigating school challenges, or finding out which wellness strategies actually have a scientific backing. Well, Theresa, without going any further into that, I just love to jump into a conversation. I want to welcome you to the show. How are you doing today?
Thank you very much. I'm doing fantastic. Happy to be here.
Wonderful, wonderful. So it sounds to me like your story came to you.
Very
I
true.
would like to hear about how a guest finds the way to their path. And, a lot of times there's some life event or some transformational thing. In your case, it was pretty straightforward. Why don't you get into that a little bit?
Yeah, this totally came to me. This is everything I'm doing right now pretty much is nothing that I ever planned or thought about doing or anything like that. So I had my daughter, and she was about 3.5 years old when she was diagnosed with autism. And at that time, I had never worked in autism before. I have worked in the healthcare industry. So I have a PhD in computational chemistry from Yale. I'm a chemist through and through.
Okay.
So
All right.
theoretical chemistry, physical, like organic chemistry type. And that's what I was doing. So I was focused on health, but never in the autism space.
This is a whole different side of the spectrum there.
Yeah. No, and I'm doing like drug discovery. So,
Right.
I started, understanding how molecules are interacting with proteins and,
Sure.
so very granular. And then I did transition more and more onto the business side. So understanding marketing. And then I also worked for nonprofits in the healthcare space, working with developing countries and delivering healthcare to them. So I've been focused on healthcare my entire career. But then when my daughter was diagnosed with autism, that's when really everything changed.
So what brought you to this diagnosis?
My daughter was not developing. It wasn't a surprise. So when she was diagnosed, it was of the more profound autism type. So not speaking, not pointing,
Oh,
not
okay.
smiling, not playing. It still was devastating, and I certainly needed a period to grieve the changes as to kind of what life was going to be. But that's how this all started, with that diagnosis.
So you went from sort of recognizing that something doesn't seem to be right to, okay, now we know what it is. I got to deal with it.
Right. And so then with all this healthcare background that I have, I was just like, okay, so what do we do?
Right.
Like what are our options? And there really was none. I was told, this is a lifelong diagnosis. Things are really going to get harder, not easier. And there's minimal things to do. And it just really wasn't a satisfying answer for anyone to be told, a loved one, like, this is it, like there's nothing you can do. That's Not many people are going to just accept that. So
Right. So as a point of reference, how old is your daughter now?
she's 15.
Okay. So
Yep.
this is about 12, 13 years ago.
Correct.
Okay,
Yep.
perfect. All
Yeah.
right. So things were a little different back then. Uh,
Yeah.
and I think that my experience, not having raised an autistic child, but working with some um, through our programs, there's become very least, a much um, more profound recognition of the situation. And, it's like weird. I don't like to call it a disease or anything like that. It's a condition. It's now they call it neurodivergent. They've got all these terms that they use
Yeah.
for what it is. Now it's a spectrum. It's like it's all these different things where, like back in the old days, they just say, you got this. And now it's like, well, okay, well, you're somewhere in this range of things that can happen now. I think there's a lot more, I don't know, at least understanding of the situation maybe a little better.
Well, the issue stems from the diagnosis. So
Right.
there is no blood test or urine test or MRI. There's no definitive piece of paper that has some kind of number tied to your child's body that says this is autism.
Right, exactly.
And so then it's so like
Not
that's
like you
how
got a
it,
T
it
cell count you
presents.
can watch.
Yeah, it gets, yeah, it's very frustrating that way. And so that's why I think there are so many terms for it being autism, because it can look so differently, right? So how do you use one word to describe many things?
Right,
It's very difficult that way. So yeah, I think that's where a lot of the ambiguity comes from. When you get a diagnosis for autism, it's based upon observations. So
right,
usually you have reports from like a speech therapist and an occupational therapist and a physical therapist, and you're looking at all the different delays and the difficulties, and what's really impacting life. That's really what makes an autism diagnosis, is that it impacts daily living.
right.
And that's it's all based on observation. So that
Well, and they also have to determine that, like, a lot of the, if you will, symptoms of autism are sensory. And so you have to determine that the senses are physiologically functioning. Like, a
right.
child could have a hearing impediment, and that could dramatically affect how they act. That might have nothing to do with
Yep.
their processing.
100%. Yep.
And at
Yeah.
the same time, they could have no problem and act like there's a problem. And, so at a 2-year-old child where the communication isn't clear, you don't have language the same way you do as a, 8 or 10-year-old child. It's a lot more difficult to sort of figure out, how it's
Yeah. It's very true. And the hearing aspect, like that's one thing. So many times doctors say, okay, let's try and rule things out before we just say it's autism, right?
right,
So hearing is one thing. And for kids who are younger, there's different tests to do, and there's specialized hearing labs to go into. You
right,
can even get a procedure if the child won't sit still or even like pay attention to certain things. Hearing tests can be done under anesthesia. So there are all these things to do to kind of eliminate that, because that is 100% accurate. Sometimes it's a hearing issue, not necessarily a developmental issue.
right,
And then the hearing gets resolved, and it ends up not being an autism diagnosis. But that's what doctors want to see beforehand, before doing and giving an autism diagnosis. They usually want to be very thorough.
right. So now you've got this diagnosis, and basically they're like, well, it's gonna suck to be you. I mean, like, they're not really giving you like a series of strategies, or, there's all these programs available, there's all these mentors, or, there's not like all these resources for you.
Yeah, and it was really more like, especially because I'm coming from the healthcare industry, where I was helping create education programs for doctors to stay up to date in different oncology protocols, right? So, like, if you have oncology, then you do certain tests, you identify certain markers, you go after them. Like, there's a whole strategy and plan. And with autism, there wasn't. So then I started just going into PubMed, because
Yeah.
that's, as a scientist, that's, it's like, all right, let me
Where
come
you
up to
go,
speed.
yeah.
Yeah. Who's doing the research? What does the research say?
Right.
I'm not going to wait 30 years because typically that's what it takes to go from, a PubMed article takes 30 years for it to
Yeah.
trickle down to your general pediatrician's office or, specialist and things like
I
that.
don't have
So
that much time to wait.
no, not at all, especially when I have the knowledge.
Right.
Like I have been doing this professionally in different therapeutic areas. So it was, all right, let me just go to PubMed. And then I started building a healthcare team for my daughter based upon the doctors who were doing that research so that I could get in front of the people who knew what they were doing.
So when you jumped into PubMed, I'm a, overcoming a very aggressive cancer right now, and I spend a lot of time in PubMed, and I'm educating my doctors about what needs to be done so that I'm getting the treatment I need. So I know
Yes.
exactly where you're at when it comes
Yeah.
to that. I'm the world's foremost expert on my condition because I want to live a long, long, healthy life, and going down their
Yeah.
road, I wasn't going to get there. And because they're, like you said, they're 20 years behind time or more. And so tell me, what did you discover? Like, when you're dealing with PubMed, you're dealing with case studies, clinical trials, you're dealing with, all ranges of science. People go, oh, it's science. You don't know what science is. It goes through all these different, degrees of trial and error and study and peer review and there's all these many, many levels before it becomes accepted. And so on PubMed, like you said, you can find a wide range of uh, levels of science. So what did you find? Hi, this is Joe Grumbine, and I wanted to share an update. The platform that hosts this podcast has made some changes to the subscriber settings, and we have a number of subscriber-only episodes that we offer to the supporters. And for a minimum of $3 a month, we can get you signed up. And if you're already signed up and you're having some kind of trouble locating these episodes in the other platforms, I would say maybe the best answer is to unsubscribe and then resubscribe. I'm sorry for the hassle. I don't have any way to make a change, but I'm very grateful for all the support. Thank you.
I would say one of the first things that kind of really shook my perspective on everything was different studies throughout the year showing that autism diagnosis does not have to be permanent.
Nice.
Yeah, and so
That's some
then
good news. Yeah.
yeah, and so back then it used to be called an optimal outcome. And so they would say, ballpark, it was around 10% of kids with autism lost their diagnosis and had an optimal outcome, meaning they
Nice.
didn't need any more speech therapy or OT or, help in school, and they were making friends and they're talking,
Not
like they're
bad
just living
numbers.
their life.
Yeah, 10%'s a good chunk.
Right. And then in 2023, so that was the information that, I latched onto and said,
Oh
all
yeah.
right, 10%, like, getting into Yale is harder than 10%. So I
Right.
can 10% is good. I can do that.
Yeah.
I'm not afraid for that number. So then that's really what focused me and said, all right, I've got to put a lot of attention. I've really got to understand because, that's a big change in my daughter's life. So it was really getting to know the science. What are they doing? What are the health issues that are, causing different sensory issues? What are health issues that are causing, digestive issues, right? So just really understanding the issues my daughter was having. But then once you go down that scientific rabbit hole, you have to understand every perspective. So
It's a lifetime's worth of learning in there. I mean, there's so many different nuances. In the limited experience I have, I'm like, wow, this is just like endless. You the
essentially,
manifestations of this condition can go, wildly from a kid that can only eat, red soft food to, I mean, there's all these just like it goes in all directions, every which way, how it can manifest. And you gotta have to have some kind of understanding, or at least of the way that it happens. Like maybe all the different manifestations you can collect into a pathway that says, well, this probably came from this, and then you can sort of understand how it got there.
Yeah, so it's like weaving a tapestry of all this
Right,
information. So just because, I'm learning something about sensory issues, that many times it's connected to digestive issues,
right,
right? Which then is connected to neurotransmitters, which loop in the brain, right? So it's like
right,
nothing was really isolated. And that was the thing where I really had to study and make sure I didn't say, oh, well, she's not having this problem, I don't need to know about this. It was no, I need
right.
to
It's all
know
connected,
about,
right?
yeah.
Especially as we're
So
learning more about the gut and its, widespread connection to everything
everything.
physiological.
Yeah. And even something so simple as like gluten, right?
Right,
So like really understanding the mechanism of action, not listening to like, what I don't know, some article on like Yahoo or something like that, but
right,
like getting into the science, like let me really understand this and understanding how gluten, the mechanism of action, how it impacts everyone. And so yeah, it does make the gut more permeable for
hmm,
everybody, right? And so the gut becomes more permeable, things get let out into the body that normally wouldn't. The
all
immune
right,
system comes and cleans it up. And typically in like 20 minutes or so, a healthy person can, eat the gluten, have that immune kind of cleanup and nothing is impacted. But when someone has pressure on their immune system and it's being overworked for some other reason, then that's where something like gluten can really become problematic. And
right,
not just in the gut, but the central nervous system is highly protected, but gluten also makes that more permeable. So
right.
I looked into pharmaceutical companies who were studying drugs to pass the blood-brain barrier by tagging a molecule that looked like gluten. So
Ah,
Farmer was trying to manipulate this and say, okay, we know how to make things more permeable. And that was like, oh, okay, I'm really understanding why something like gluten could have an impact on someone who has so much other like health issues going on. So it's
right.
just
And then there's all these other lectins that are similar to gluten that can have a similar
correct.
problem. And,
Yeah.
and so yeah, I mean, it keeps going on and on. And
Yeah.
so let's jump into your autism program. It sounds like you're getting an understanding of what they're learning and these mechanisms that are, having impact on the situation. And so now you're like, okay, well, I got to come up with a program. You're meeting the scientists that are involved. You're creating sort of a network, a team. How's it going from there?
So it snowballed into, okay, I came up to speed on the literature. I identified really great cutting edge doctors to work with. We had really good appointments and we would kind of be able to have discussions. And then these doctors were the ones who said, you really need to start educating others.
Nice.
And that was
Love it.
not my plan. And I was like, oh, no.
A doctor recognizes the value of a program like that. That's powerful because usually they're busy going, I don't know, I got too many things I'm trying to do.
Yeah, well, but again, my academic and my business training all
Right.
taught me how to interact with these really busy physicians, how to get
Yeah.
them to give my daughter the best care.
Love it.
And so then they encouraged me to start teaching others. So I started with a blog and then I have a YouTube channel, and that's actually 10 years old now.
Nice.
And so what I would do was I would take these concepts relating to autism and the science. And then I would just turn it into a simple video that would teach parents. And
Okay.
so it really started as let me just make this information as accessible as possible. And then parents wanted to start to work with me directly. And so now what we have is called the Navigating Autism platform. And we have 7 categories where parents can progress through and make sure they don't miss anything. So there's lots to do with healthcare. There's lots to do with diet and supplements, probiotics. There's also the parents' mindset, because this is a long journey.
Oh, yeah.
Many parents are diagnosed with PTSD when their kids are in their
Sure.
teenage years, just because of all the stress. So it's really important for us to work with parents and teach them that this is a stressful situation, and how do you take care of yourself as well.
Right.
Then education, there's a lot of research going on in education and what's the best way to educate someone who has autism. So we work with parents on that. And then also celebrating. So we have health coaches that work on the platform. We put parents into small group pods so they have that sense of community. They meet with their health coach. They have chats throughout the month. And the parents can also order functional medicine testing through the platform, get the information, and then we teach them where to find good doctors. They choose who they want to work with. And then we also help them create agendas and how do you keep everything tracking and moving along. So that's what we cover in the platform.
So it sounds like, anytime somebody talks about a program like this, community to me is really important. I know that for a parent, we've worked with a number of parents that are dealing with this, and there's this sort of nobody understands, you can't possibly. It's like any major situation, whether it's cancer or autism or any major disease or injury, it's like so overwhelming. Like, how could
Yeah.
anybody possibly understand what I'm going through? But the truth is, many, many, many people share that same experience, and when you can bring those people together, it's really powerful. And I always think that that's the reason I do this podcast, is to create this, sort of all-encompassing, healthy living minded community where people can find a connection to whatever is their issue or whatever it is they're trying to work at. And it works, you bring
Yeah.
people together. Um, so is this regional or is it virtual or both, or,
It's virtual. So it's
okay,
virtual and we work all over the world.
nice. So you get somebody who's got a situation over in Georgia and they might be talking to somebody in England or anywhere in the world and still sharing a similar experience.
Correct.
I love
Yeah,
that. I love that.
definitely.
And so how many people have are participating at any given time in this program?
We can expand to accommodate. So we
Nice.
don't have limits at all. The learning is on the platform. So there's an element of self-learning and then interacting with the health coaches and me. I certainly love working with the parents on science. So there's no capacity limit.
So how is the science developing? Like, I know that they're recognizing all different elements and they're identifying maybe mechanisms. The brain is such an amazing organ, and kind of almost insulting to call it an organ because it's so much more than that. And with neuroplasticity and all the different capabilities that the brain has to rewire itself and to heal itself and to correct problems, what is the news developments with on that level?
Well, specifically to the brain and kind of something that's been a hot topic now would be something called leucovorin, which is
Okay.
the prescription B9 and folinic acid. And the reason why it's really profound that this has become such a hot topic is the sense that the reason why leucovorin in certain kids with autism is so impactful and can increase speech so much is because there's antibodies in the brain that's blocking this vitamin from being utilized.
Okay.
And so that really it goes back to the beginning of our conversation where autism there's no lab test or anything to do, right?
Right.
I think we're getting closer and closer to having some hopefully typical tests to do when you get that initial question of, oh, is there something going on with my child? So that's like where the field is going towards. We're definitely not there yet, but
Sure.
it's good to see that doctors are starting to really understand and communicate the different issues that are going on in the body health-wise that can really make a difference in the child's life and the parents' lives.
I love that. So how is your daughter?
She's great. She's in high school.
Okay.
And she's
So
good.
how has all of this work you've done, how do you see, I know it's not really a quantifiable question, but how much of an impact do you think you've had? Like, had you not done all this work and discovered all
Oh,
these things, where do you think she'd have been compared to where she is now?
she'd be in a very, very different place. So if I didn't address a lot of her health concerns, just her quality of life and her life expectancy would be
Nice.
very, very low. So it's a completely different life. I have no regrets whatsoever of all the time I spent in PubMed and just the different life that I have now as a result.
I was going to say, I'm sure you've benefited dramatically from it as well. So
Definitely.
a lot of my guests, I like to ask, about a particular story that was impactful. Obviously, your daughter and yours is the most impactful story to you. But aside from that one, can you share a story with us of somebody who your program has affected in a really dramatic way?
Sure. There's many stories. One that comes to mind is of a dad and his son. He, wasn't speaking. It was really difficult, not sleeping at night. The child was very difficult, so no one really wanted to watch him. So both parents kind of had to come home from work at all different times. And as they started resolving health issues, um, it's a completely different child. He can
Nice,
get his hair cut, right? No problem.
nice.
He's now in Taekwondo. And so
Wow.
his dad, sends me emails and saying like, oh, look at what we're doing now. What do we do? Like, and so they're just able to have those family moments that we all as parents kind of took for granted, thinking that was just guaranteed, and it's not. So those tender moments are really important for, father, son, and for family.
I love that. Well, Teresa, this is sort of that time. I'd like to give you a chance to wrap everything up into sort of a parting thought and share with our listeners.
Sure. So if parents or grandparents, we also work with grandparents, if anyone is really wanting to understand how they can help their child obtain optimal health and really understand all the different cutting edge research that's going on in autism, our platform is made perfectly for that. You'll get community support, you get expert people to interact with, and you can also order the tests so that you can get an understanding of yourself as to what are the real health concerns. And the platform for anyone in the US, we also accept flexible spending. So we make it as affordable and as easy as possible for parents to join and really get the support and information that they need.
Wow, that's powerful. And maybe as important, how does somebody access this platform?
Sure. So you can find me at navigatingautism.com. You can also find me, and autism, we didn't even get to talk about that, why I spell it differently, but
Right. Well, let's give yourself a chance to talk about that. You said AWEtism, and I think
yeah, it's
that's
spelled differently. So I hated the word autism. I hated seeing my daughter be in such agony and not be able to do anything in life. And life was extremely difficult. So that word autism, I didn't even like saying it. I would say, oh, she's on the spectrum. Like I would just avoid it.
Yeah.
And then as I started to learn the science and as I got to see like how determined she was when she had, like headaches and stomach aches, and she was still getting up and going to school, getting up, going on little adventures with me. Like she wanted to be part of life so much that's when I started to see the awe in that, where it's like, wow, she's just so determined. So I've got to do whatever I can so that she can do what she wants to do in life because she's working so hard at it. So that's
I
when
love that.
autism became the autism. And I looked at her so differently and just, yeah. So that's what I hope to also help parents see is
That is
just that.
powerful, powerful. Well, why don't you share that that website again so that way it doesn't get lost in this great little story.
Sure. So it's navigatingautism.com. So navigating, navigating, AWEtism.com. And I also have a YouTube channel. So same thing, Navigating Autism. If you just put my name and autism, lots of things will pop up in YouTube and Instagram. We also have another website that has more of a blog, and that's AWEtism.net.
Beautiful. All right. Well, Dr. Lyons, it's a pleasure. And I really have enjoyed this conversation. And my invitation to return and go deep into any of these topics is open. And I just want to thank you for being here.
Sure. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. This has been another edition of the Healthy Living Podcast. I'm your host, Joe Grumbine. I want to thank all of our listeners for making this possible. And we will see you next time. This has been another episode of the Healthy Living Podcast. We produce this show so that people can share their stories, people that have overcome obstacles, people that are undergoing obstacles. We're building a community of health-minded individuals. If you're interested in supporting the show, please leave a review on the platform you're listening to it on. If you're interested in becoming a guest, please send an email to itsjoegrumbine@gmail.com, or you can send a note into the notes section of the podcast. All right. Well, thank you for supporting this show, and we hope you've enjoyed it.